Hi there, and welcome to this video on how to find common factors from terms. So last time around we were looking at just numbers and talking about factor pairs, and went on to look at highest common factors, and we're going to do something very similar today but slightly harder. So what I mean by terms is, well, this is a term. This term has a number in it and has a letter, and this is also a term, just numbers. And we can have a term with just letters, which you'll see later on in the video. And basically it's something separated by a plus or a minus, or joined together by a plus or a minus. So we're going to do exactly the same thing, but as the highest common factor, looking at these two numbers. Now, 1 is a common factor of both 5 and 15. But in fact, it's a common factor of every number in the world and every letter in the world. So we don't actually ever talk about it. But I just wanted to point it out. But that's the last time you'll hear me mention that in this video. So we've got to think of another number. We've got to rack through our times tables and think, right, which times tables give me 5 and which times tables give me 15. And if it's the same table appears, then it's a factor. So 5 is in the 5 times table, of course, it's the first one, and 15 is in the 5 times table. 1 times 5 and 3 times 5. So we would say that 5 is a common factor to both this term and this term. Let's make it a bit harder. Now, here, if we take this first number, we know it's not 15 because 20 is not in the 15 times table. So we've got to start thinking a little bit harder. But in fact, it's the same as the last one. We can multiply 5 by 3 to make 15, and 5 times 4 to make 20. So 5, again, is a common factor. We can make it slightly harder still. So this time, if you look at these two numbers, hopefully some times tables can start popping into your head, and you should be able to see that 6 is a factor of both. 6 times 3 and 6 times 4. Now, in this instance, there is actually more than one. You should be able to identify that these are both in the 3 times table as well. 3 times 6 and 3 times 8. And we haven't finished. It's also in the 2 times table. 2 times 9 and 2 times 12. So when there is more than one common factor, we always start to talk about the highest common factor. In this instance, we would say that 6 is the highest common factor purely because it's a higher number than the other two. Now, all I've done here is taken exactly the same question as before, but chucked on an AB. If you have a look, there's nothing here, and now there's an AB. So we still have the same common number factors, but now you're going to see we can actually take out more than just numbers. So, looking at this, it's a bit harder because we're not actually thinking about normal times tables now. But there is an A in both of them, 1A and 1A here. So we can actually say A is a common factor. If we think about multiplication, think about what we know about multiplying terms together, we can times A by 18 to make 18A, and we can times this A by 24B to make 24AB. There we have it. Now, because we can take an A outside, we can also start to combine these together. So if we can take an A and a 2, we get 2A. So 2A times 9 would make 18A, and 2A times 12B would make 24AB. And we can combine it with the 3, and we can also combine it with the 6. I'll just go over this one. So 6A times 3 would make this, so 3 of these, and 4 of these would make 24A, so 4B times this would make 24AB. Now, there's 7 factors, not including the 1, of course, and we would say 6A is the highest common factor because it's the highest number, but it's also got a letter as well. So it's the highest common factor is the highest thing that is common to both. Now, This one looks horrendous, and this is literally as hard as it gets. So, if we look at the numbers 12 and 16, you should be able to see that we have 4 and 2 we could take out. If we look at just the letters, you should be able to see we could take out an A, because there's an A in both, and we could also say, well, there's a B in both. But we can go further. We can start to combine these, so we could have a 2A and a 2B, and a 4A and a 4B. We can go even further. We can start to combine these two together. So we could say, well, I could take an A and a B at the same time, so it would be AB. Now, here's a question. Is 4AB squared a factor? Now, what that means is, could we times this by something to make this term, and could we times 4AB squared by by something to make this term? So let's have a look. Start with the numbers. Can we times 4 by something to make 12? Yep, 3. And could we times 4 by something to make 16? Well, yes, 4. And we knew that from earlier. And A times A would give me A squared, and A times, well, 1 would give me A, so that works. B squared is a bit more complicated. So B squared times B, I know, will give me B cubed, because this is just B times B times B, and this is just B times B. So I just need to times it by an extra B to make this, and I don't need to times it by anything apart from 1 to make it B squared. So yes, this is a common factor, and that is the highest one of everything we can take out. So to understand this, you've got to understand and see all of these, and then kind of put them all together. Now, what I suggest you do is try and pause the video and maybe write down or just think about what the highest common factors of these, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So here come the answers. So the first one, it's quite a simple one. There's no letters common, so just the highest number is in both of these. That's 8. 8 times 2 and 8 times 3. Now I can see straight away there's an n in both, so I know n is a factor. But can I combine it with a number? Yes. These are both in the 6 times table, so 6 times 5 and 6 times 4. So 6n is the highest common factor. Now there's no numbers here, so I don't have to worry about those, but is there a letter in both? Yes, m. So m is a common factor and the highest common factor. Now looking at this one, it's not one we've actually seen in the video, but there is an m outside, so there's an m in both, so I can say that's a common factor, and there's a p in both, so I can say that's also a common factor. Combining those together, mp. Now looking at the numbers, I know that they're in the 2s, the 4s, and the 8 times table. So I can say an 8 is a common factor, an m and a p, so I can combine all of those three together. Now the last one is the hardest one of them all. I can tell you that they're both in the 2s and the 4s, so I'm going to put a 4 as a common factor. I can say an m as a common factor, but also I can go a bit further. I can say an m squared is common, because m squared times an m will give me m cubed, so I can say m squared. And I can also say an n squared is common. N squared times an n would give me this, and just n squared times 1 would give me this. So I can actually take out a 4, an m squared, and an n squared to be all of the common factors combined.